A very good afternoon to all of you. Uh, we are here with our sessions in your course called as Project Management, having a course code of MMPO 002. Up till this session, we have covered your block 1, that is Introduction to Projects, block 2, the planning part. The block 3 we saw, which was the monitoring and control part. Then today we shall be starting your last block of this particular course, that is block 4, which is project closure. Now from the name itself, we can say that when a project is coming to an end, what are the things done usually by the project team or the project manager or the project organization? All of us know that each project has distinct stages of life cycle. It starts from the initiation part, then goes through the planning and design stage. Next stage comes as implementation, monitoring, as well as control. Then finally we move into the project closure. So in this project closure, we shall see two aspects. One is the contracts and the partnering that is done in the projects. That is the unit 13.1.3 that we shall be looking at today. In the forthcoming session, we shall be doing your last unit 14, that is, which will be telling about project audits. So let us begin our session today, which is covering the project contracts and partnering. So here we shall be looking at the contracts, the tenders and partners, their various characteristics, types, how they are carried out in the project. First, we shall try to look at the contracts. Now, all of us know that contracts are done between two parties. So it is an agreement between two parties. Who are the two parties? Now, the contractor and the contractee, for achieving the objectives of the project. All of us might have seen that while carrying out a particular project of construction of Ram Mandir in Ayodhya, which was done for the Ram Mandir Trust, the other party which did the work or was doing the work or is going to complete the work is a company called as L&T. Now, here the Ram Mandir Trust is the organization or the individual or we can say the trust for whom the work is to be done. Now, who will be doing it? Now, the construction activities are done by a particular organization, project organization called as L&T, who is called as contractor. Now, there is an agreement between the two parties. Now, we can say that in general terms, An agreement is not always a contract, but a contract is always an agreement which is legally binding on the two parties. Now, the two parties that we are talking of are the contractor and the contractee. When we say legally binding, that means whatever are the terms and conditions, the modes of payment between the parties, that means the contractee will be paying to the contractor for the work. All things have to be done as it has been agreed upon at the beginning, without which any complications we can sort out legally. So we say all contracts are agreements, but not all agreements are contracts, because agreements may be legally binding or may not be legally binding on the two parties. If it is legally binding on the two parties, it becomes a contract. Now, the basic purpose of any contract is to achieve the objectives of the project envisaged at the beginning. Now, the objectives may be in terms of the completion time for completion, the cost that is to be incurred in completing the project, as well as the quality of work that is to be done. That means all the deliverables should be in proper manner. Now, when we are talking about the two parties contracted, it is the party who does the work for the other party. Now we said every contract has two parties. One is who does the work, another is for whom the work is done. So contractor is the party who does the work, and for that it takes remuneration as agreed upon in the terms of contract from the other party. Now who is the other party? Now the party for whom the contractor does the work. What he is called as? Now usually we call that party as contractee. So contractor is who does the work, contractee is for whom the work is done, and the contract is legally binding. But when we are talking of partnering, then here we have collaboration by the two parties to get the project done. Who are the two parties? The party for whom the work is being done, that is the client or the customer, and the party who does the work, that means the project organization or the project team. Now when there is collaboration between these two parties in order to achieve the objectives of the project, we say it is partnering. Now let us get a brief idea or introduce ourselves to contracts. We said from the very beginning, a contract is an agreement between two parties, the contractor and the contractee, and it is the agreement which is legally binding on both the parties. So contractor is who does the work in consideration of remuneration. Who is the contractee? The party for whom the contractor does the work. Now in the agreement, that means the contract, It will be including all type of agreements. That means the work that is to be carried out by the contractor, wherein express written authorization to the contrary. What means? It means that if it is expressly written, authorized, that you are not supposed to do these things in the contract, then we shall not have that in our agreement. Now, mostly in Indian context, what we find, that the government is the contractee. That means the maximum work of government is done by another party. So government enters into agreement with another party to do or to have their work done. Now, who does the work? Now, various kind of contractors are there. They can be large scale contractors like L&T, like APIL, another party is there, who go for big government projects. Or you can have an Adani group also, who also do the work for the government. In the private sector or the public sector, usually they get the work done by themselves. That means their own project department, or they go for another party, that is the contractor. So usually they have a particular unit called as project department. So when we are looking at various types of contracts, the contracts are based on various compensation plans. Now, what are the compensation plans? These are the payments to be made by the contractor to the contractee. So the way the payments are being made or the compensation plans are designed, we can have various types of contract. Now, let us see what are the various types of contracts that we have. The first one is fixed price contract. This is one of the most widely used type of contract that is used to execute a project or have a project done. Now, from the name itself, we can know that the contract has a fixed price attached to it. That means the contractee will be paying a particular amount to the contractor for getting the work done. That is there in the agreement. So the cost for the work or project is determined without taking into account the resources used. Now here what happens? The contractee, or for whom the work is being done, fixes a lump sum amount that for this kind of project, having these objectives to be achieved, we shall be paying an amount of, suppose, rupees 10 crore rupees. Now, the contractor will have to do the work and achieve the objectives of the project, and whatever is the cost incurred by the contractor, he will get or the party will get, the contractor will get rupees 10 crore from the contractee. Now, if the contractor has completed the project and has been achieved and has been able to achieve the deliverables below rupees 10 crores, then it will be making some kind of profits. Now, if the resources that are used is higher than 10 crore rupees, then we say that the contractor will be suffering from losses. Now, how this price is fixed? Now, usually, similar kind of works are taken as baselines. How much we are spending for similar kind of projects. Taking that as the baseline or the benchmark, the contractee fixes a certain amount as the price for the contract. So when he fixes or the contractee fixes the price for the contract, we call it as fixed price contract. Now sometimes what happens within this fixed price contract, the agreement may also contain clauses relating to contract changes. Now, what kind of clauses that may be? Now, sometimes due to changing circumstances at actual point of time, the contractee may ask for some kind of changes in the planned objectives in the midway of implementation. So, if those kind of changes are going to be incorporated in the project work or in the agreement, then the contractor may ask for change in the compensation amount that was fixed at the beginning of the project or the agreement. Now, if it is containing, the agreement is containing the clauses relating to such kind of changes, then it can be done. Any price changes in this type of fixed price contracts in the actual resources used can affect any party. Now, who are the two parties? We know that contractor and the contractee. Any price which falls during the implementation for the resources will help the contractor, because whatever was the thing taken into account during the agreement point, the contractor now will be doing the work at lesser cost. Thereby, the contractor may be in a position to generate higher amount of profit. Think of the reverse side. If the price rises for the resources that are being used, the contractor will suffer losses. Or in other words, we can say the contractee will be in a safe seat as it safeguards itself against the rising prices of the resources for the contract. Here, the contractor takes greater amount of risk. Risk in the sense, the price changes, which will bring in the various types of profits or losses. Now, always the contractor will be lookout in order to have profit from the contract. So he has to manage the project in a better way. That means the contractor will be monitoring and controlling the project till its end so that deliverables are achieved and a profit is generated. That means by performing well, the contractor can generate profit. Now, when the contractor performs well, it also helps in order to generate future contracts for the contractor, because the past track record of the contractor we find is he or she or the organization has been able to implement the project and provided the deliverables as envisaged in the objectives of the project. And as we said, it is one of the most widely used type of contract to execute a project. Now we shall see a second type of contract, that is called as cost reimbursement. Now, in fixed price we have seen that at the point at the time of agreement, a lump sum amount is fixed between the contractor and the contractee to be paid to the contractor by the contractee, and within that amount the contractor has to complete all the necessary activities of the project and will generate the deliverables of the project. Now sometimes what happens, the contractor, if similar kind or nature of work are not regularly undertaken, then the contract may not find a baseline to fix a price. So in those cases, what the contractor does, it tries to go for another kind of contract which is based on remuneration called as cost reimbursement. Now what happens here? The contractor does the activities or the work. Whatever are the costs incurred are tracked and recorded properly, and at the end the overall cost of the project is found out. This overall cost of the project, the contractor adds some additional amounts or payments as profit. Suppose 10% of the cost. So whatever is the cost, 10% of that is added as profit, and the total amount now generated is to be given by the contractee as compensation for the work if we are following cost reimbursement. Now, what happens in this case? In fixed price contracts, we saw the contractor may suffer damages in case of rising cost of the resources. But here the contractor will safeguard itself from the rising costs, because whatever is the total cost, to that it will attach an additional amount as profit and it will be compensated by the contractee. So the contractee may suffer losses if there is any kind of rising cost. So as we said at the beginning, it is used in contracts where estimation of cost is difficult. And it is not that widely used. It is the fixed price contract which is mostly used, but here it is rarely used. Now, another type of contract that we can see is indefinite delivery. Now, we know that the project deliverables in terms of time, cost, quality is planned at the beginning of the project. Sometimes what happens, we do not know what is the kind or the number or the quantity of deliverables that is going to be generated from the project and is to be used by the contractee, usually by the government. Now, when we do not know what is the quantity of deliverables to be used, but we know that during a particular period, we have to get the deliverables. So here we use a type of contract called as indefinite delivery. Now, we can take an example of vaccination program for COVID-19 security. Now here, the time frame was fixed that within suppose 6 months or suppose 1 year, all people who are of certain age should be vaccinated. Now, we have a fixed duration of the contract, but we do not know or do not have an idea that how many units or doses of vaccine is going to be used. So, during this period of 1 year, we go on to have indefinite deliveries of the outputs. So, this ensures delivery of an unspecified number of services within specific time frame. Now, as we saw in the example, in a given time frame, if the deliverables are unspecified or you have to continuously go on delivering, then we say it as indefinite delivery. Now, in the vaccination program, the vaccines were required by the government. So it was the contractee. Now the vaccines were produced by biotech companies, or we can say pharma companies. But the government didn't have a fair enough idea how many deliverables or deliveries were required to complete the total vaccination program. So it is used when the contractee is unsure of the number of jobs required to complete the project. Apart from that, we can have other type of contracts, like one is incentive contracts. Now, incentive is, as we know, an additional amount which is given to an organization for performing within a specific objective. Now, one of the incentive contracts we can have is fixed price incentive. Now, if a project is completed within the agreed fixed price and the agreement contains a clause that incentive of this amount will be provided for completing the project in a fixed price, then an additional amount will be given to the contractor by the contractee. Similarly, in cost plus contracts, that means we had a type of contract where cost plus some percentage of profit was added and this amount was paid by the contractee to the contractor. Now, when it is a cost plus contract and we deliver the outputs of the project as per the agreement, then if provided in the agreement, some incentive is given by the contractee. Another one is the performance incentive. Now, when we say performance, we say that performance can be cost, time, as well as quality. If the contractor is delivering the project in the agreed upon time, the cost, as well as the quality as planned in the objective, then incentives may be given by the contractee to the contractor. Another one is delivery incentive. Now, if we are delivering the objectives of the project in the planned schedule or as per the planned schedule, incentives may be provided by the contractee to the contractor if it is there in the agreement. Multiple incentives. Now, from the above four, either we can take single incentive or we can go for more than one type of incentives at the same time, like performance incentive as well as delivery incentive. So when you are giving more than one type of incentives, when it is achieved by the contractor, then it is called as multiple incentives. When we have other type of contracts, there also we have time and material contracts. Now, when no other type of contracts that we have seen up till now can be used for our project, then we may go for time and material contracts. When we talk of time and material contracts, the scheduled duration and the budgeted cost come into the picture. Now, the contractee will ask the contractor that please adhere to the scheduled time and the budgeted cost for the material resources to be used so that the project can be completed, and if it is entered into a legally binding agreement, then we call it as time and material contract. Contractor do not try to exceed selling price. Here what happens? The contractee has a ceiling or capping on the cost that is to be incurred in the project. Now when I say capping, suppose a project has a capping of rupees 20 crore for the material to be used, and it is legally agreed upon or entered in the contract. Now here the contractor will try to use materials maximum up to rupees 20 crores, because above that it will not be compensated by the contractee, and for this it has agreed into a contract. Now we can have another type of contract also we can keep in our mind, that is turnkey projects or turnkey contracts. Another one is non-turnkey contracts. Now what is a turnkey contract first of all? Now when the contractee goes into an agreement with the contractor and the contractor does the project from the scratch till the end, that means it will start from the designing and planning stage, implementation stage, monitoring and controlling stage, and finally the commissioning or testing stage, and it will hand over to the contractor. And here the contractor has only one task to do. It will take the key and open the project with that key without any kind of botheration except making the payment to the contractor. So here the contractor does all kind of activities or the works for the project as laid down by the contractee in its objective. So this kind of contracts are used basically in engineering contracts, highly technologically advanced contracts, where the contractee may not have sufficient knowledge or idea regarding carrying out the task, or it may not have contractors who can do the work in parts. So any organization which is technically competent as well as has the know-how in particular sphere and does the work from the scratch till the end, we call that as turnkey contracts. Now, in some contracts, the contractee may divide the whole project into work packages or small tasks. Now, these work packages can be given to different contractors. For example, one contractor may be used for civil works, one contractor may be used for the factory erection, one contractor may be used for the delivery of machineries and fitting the machineries, So here we'll be using multiple contractors who will be doing their own work in a sequential manner, and they will be giving the contractee their assigned tasks. They will be handing over to the contractee, and the combination of all the tasks will give us the final project. So here no contractor has fair idea in all kind of works to be done in a particular project, as that was happening in the turnkey project. So this is non-turnkey project. In the turnkey project, the contractee only takes the key from the contractor after it is completed. That means the project is completed, and opens the project. But here in non-turnkey contracts, the contractee gets the various work packages work from various contractors, and it tries to put in place all the work packages so that a complete project is formed. Now, we have seen contracts, types of contracts, and how that can be used in our projects. Now, we shall move into tenders. All of us might have seen this particular term tenders in many newspapers, or we have heard of it that a tender is being floated, or we may have seen various kind of movies showing or depicting the scenes of tenders. That means how a tender is going on. So a certain idea immediately forms in our mind when we talk about tenders. So when we are talking of tenders, that means a rough idea comes to your mind that a work is to be done is required to be done, and it is required by a party. The party will not do the work itself. It wants another party to do the work for them. Now the other party who will be doing the work may be many in numbers. Now out of those many in numbers, how we have to choose one? Now we go for a process that we try to advertise that our work is such, with this kind of objectives to be achieved, and it has to be completed in this particular budget. So various other organizations will try to submit their applications or proposals, or in other words, tenders. That means a documented, filled up format, and will vie for doing the work if selected. So when we are talking of tender, it is the proposal in form of offer or bid to execute a project, or its work packages, or its activities in exchange of compensation. That means the party which is selected and does the work, that means executes the work or the project in total, he will be paid compensation. Now, when we are talking of Proposal in form of offer or bid. What we mean by that? Proposal in form of offer or bid means when a certain work with its own respective specifications and the cost allocated to it, that means the budgeted amount, is advertised, many parties try to put in their proposals or intentions to do the work with their own budgeted cost within which they will be completing the work. Now here the party which wants the work to be done will check the various proposals of intention or offer of intention, look at the capabilities, capacities, experience of the other parties who are going to do the work, and will try to select a particular party which matches its requirements in terms of objectives, in terms of specifications, in terms of quality also. So we say in exchange of compensation, that means for the work, whatever is the amount quoted by the party who is going to do the work will be paid compensation for the work as they have envisaged, and if they are selected to do the work. If we are looking at the share markets, tenders are official offer for takeover bid of shares or stocks, or invitation to submit a bid for a project. Now when we are talking in sense of financial world, sometimes what happens, a company wants to take over another company, so it will be offering a higher price for the shares to the shareholders, and which is usually higher as compared to the current market price of the shares. So thereby what will happen? Now the shareholders will get attracted towards this offer and may sell their shares to the company wanting to take over the original company. So this is called as official offer for takeover bid. Or in case of projects, it is an invitation to submit a bid. Now what it is? Now we submit a proposal or intention of doing the work for a company or its project in exchange of some compensation, which we put in our own terms, that cost, quality are this, and if it is found suitable, it is accepted by the company. So tenders are request for tender is a formal request or invitation to suppliers. If we require any kind of resources, we also go for tenders. Now the suppliers will submit their tenders quoting their own prices and specifications. If it matches the organization's requirements, then it will select one supplier and it will go forward in the project. Now, When a tender is advertised, there is always a deadline for submission of these bids. That means the proposals, within which the parties which are wanting to do the work will have to submit their proposals or tenders. Types of tenders. Now we have two type of tenders in general. One is open tender, another is selective tender. Now what is that open tender? We as an organization, we require a particular project or its work package to be done. Now here we float a tender either in newspapers or in e-portals nowadays, or in both. Now there it will be mentioned what kind of work, what are the specifications, what is the cost of the work to be done, or the compensation amount to be done, to be paid for the work to be done. Now these things, taking into these things, the interested parties will submit their tenders within the deadline. So parties from any sphere of work can enter into this kind of tenders. So it is the basic or the primary form of tender. Now selective tender. In order to increase the caliber of bids or the qualitative aspect of the bids, we go for selective tenders. Contractors having experience and expertise are given the opportunity to go for such kind of bids. Now, what happens? Suppose we have floated a tender for installation of gas pipeline in the project. Now, if it is an open tender, anybody can enter into the process by submitting their proposals or bids. Suppose think of a organization which is working in the field of supply of medical facilities or medical equipments, entering into the gas pipelines in the factory. Now here, the organization submitting the proposal may not be suitable for the work, may not be having the kind of experience or expertise to do the particular work. So here what happens? In the tender, they also ask sometimes for experience and expertise. That means what are the kind of similar works that are already done by the intending parties in the given area of the work. That can be also a criteria for selection of the party to do the work. So this is called as selective tender. When we have types of tenders, we can have serial tender. Now, what is that serial tender? Now for clients, that means the party for whom the work is going to be done, having several phases of similar works. Now, A particular project may require installation of machineries at different point of time in its implementation. That means it is a similar work which is to be done by a tender. So when it is floating a tender for their work, the client will go for bids and will negotiate with companies who can do this similar kind of work in different phases, so that it does not have to select more number of companies to do their similar works. Another is negotiated tender. From the name itself, the tender which is to be floated is negotiated with specialized organizations which are basically used in engineering and construction projects. We also have term tender. Now a tender which is having a time deadline, that means the tender is not valid after the particular or after a particular time period. We call it as term tender. That means after the passing of the particular time, we have to float a fresh tender for those kind of works. When we go to tendering process, it is the process to control the opening, assess and selection of vendors for doing the work in the project. In tenders, what happens? Due to various kind of, we can say, unnecessary or illegal activities, there can be nepotisms and bribery. That means to get insider information, companies go for using bribes to get information on other vendors' tenders, so that they can quote a lower price and get the tender. So in order to cut down on this kind of things, we have the tendering process. So here advertising is compulsory. Advertising the requirements is necessary if you are in a public company. In selection stage, you have to go by the capacity, the capability and experience of the vendor. Now, when you are having a selection stage, it can be in two forms. In open tender, we don't go for capacity, capability or experience, but we go by whether they are meeting our specifications and the budgeted cost. Or if you are having a two-stage tender, that means first you select the vendors according to their capacity, capability and experience. Now the vendors selected will be asked for bidding for the particular work. Then we have invitation for submitting the tender, we evaluate it and award the contract. Whenever tender is floated, we give instructions along with specifications, prices and how the tender is going to be evaluated. When we talk of partnerships, it is two or more people getting together to do the work. One who actually does the work, one who is a partner but does not work is inactive. General partnership is all the partners in the activity or the project have personal liabilities to the project. Limited partnership, we can have general partners as well as partners who have liability up to the amount they have paid for the project. And limited liability partnership, the most widely used, we can have partners whose liabilities are limited to the amount they have paid for the project. We go for partnering for various kind of advantages like reduced administrative and legal expenses, to curb various kind of risks, or it will help companies from lucrative new ventures. When we go for partnering, we go for what kind of partners we shall take, how the partners will work upon, how the work is going on, and at the end, how the partnership worked in the project. In the partnership, usually we have a certain kind called as PPP, public-private partnership. Public means government organization, the private organization get together to have a project. Usually, in PPP mode, the government asks a private company or organization to do the work on their behalf and compensate for the cost by generating revenues through modes like BOT, build, operate, then transfer. The private organization creates the project, operates it for a certain years, and whatever the revenue generated, it is kept by the private organization, and finally the project is transferred to the government organization. Similar, we can have is build, own, operate, and transfer. That is put. Now here the same process also applies. The private organization owns the project for a certain period, operates it for revenues, and transfer it back to the government. So in today's session, we have seen about the various aspects regarding contracts, the tenders, and the partnership. So while going for projects, according to the scenario, the circumstances, usually the party for whom the work is to be done can adopt any kind of methods. So this is the way we go forward. We shall meet again in the next session. Thank you.